Hello. This is Amy with Jig and Chisel Woodworks, and I am back on the lathe today. If you haven't seen my other video about having a whole day on the lathe, go check that out after this. But I had some more wood, and I wanted to make some more rolling pins because those were really fun to make. I've already knocked one out this morning, so this is that French style tapered rolling pin. This one's just solid oak. And I just really thought they turned fun, and I hope they'll sell at my market that's coming up. But I wanted to kind of take you guys through the process of actually making one. I haven't mic'd myself up while actually making something before, so we'll see how that goes. Sorry if it's a little rough, but this is just another oak blank that I already have loaded up, and we are going to turn it into the exact same rolling pin that I just showed you. So let's go check that out. So I start out by just getting it all cylindrical, knocking off all the corners and making it just one straight line, and then I start on the taper after it's all rounded over. I also start with really shallow passes because those corners can chip real easy if you try to go too deep. Now I rarely make it all the way around before moving the tool rest, just to kind of slowly take it down little by little. And I always turn off the lathe before I move the tool rest, because if that turns and that hits that, that's real bad. It could break not only the piece, but it could break the tool rest as well. And you always want to test to make sure none of those corners are going to hit before you turn it back on. Something I'll try to show y'all if I can get it to pick up on the camera before I get all the way to the edge. I just want to see how cool this looks, where you can kind of see through the wood a little bit. You can see where my fingers are a little blurry. And that really helps me know how far I've gone. The less of that blur I can see, the closer I know I am to getting that rounded shape. Okay, so now you can tell a lot of the corners are knocked off. This side I got a little bit farther along, but we're just going to go back the other direction and keep knocking everything down till we are fully rounded over. Okay, so we are fully rounded over. I have a pretty even cylinder. So what I like to do next is just kind of mark a few points along the rolling pin. So this is the blank I got cut at right at 24 inches. So we're going to mark our halfway point. And I'm just going to mark, I'm going to pick 5 inches. That's what I did for the last one, on either side of that halfway point. And I always find this a little fun. Use your tool rest. You just set your pin on that spot and twist it around, and it gets all the way around in a perfect circle. So now that I have those marked, I'm going to start the taper. I'm going to start from the outside. I'm going to do a little bit more of a drastic taper for those few inches, and then a softer taper towards the middle, and then it'll go the other direction on the other side. So I'll show you guys a little bit how I cut tapers, and also just how I use a chisel on a lathe. Also, if you've noticed, I have to move my tool rest quite a bit because it's a shorter tool rest. It's the one that came with the machine. One day I'll get a longer one. If I start making a lot of these, it'll make my life a little easier. Or if someone wants to buy me one, you're more than welcome to. But getting the tool rest decently close to the piece is pretty important because you don't want to risk that chisel kind of rocking too far and getting pulled under the piece, especially because it rotates towards you. And then when you hold the chisel, it's best to kind of support this end against your hip and then hold this end on the metal bit, and you can kind of rest your finger in this tool rest and go back and forth. Okay, so if you couldn't tell, I'm starting on the very end and I'm taking up a little bit and then going back to the end, going a little deeper, back to the end, a little farther along, and just kind of slowly lengthening that stroke so that more gets taken off at the end. And it kind of slowly forms that taper. Okay, we'll smooth it out all together at the end, but we'll go ahead and start on this other side. Get that tool rest good and close. Don't want it too close, but close enough that there's no risk of the chisel kind of sliding in between the piece and the tool rest. Might be a little easier for you to see from this side. Each pass, I just come a little bit farther along. And when I make it all the way, I kind of start over just to make the taper a little more significant. So start with those short passes. Okay, so it's not a perfect taper yet, but it's pretty good. It's got the rough shape. I do just like to check. I have these little digital calipers here, and I really just want my two ends to be roughly the same diameter. And this one's just a little bit thicker, so we are going to take it off just a little bit more. If they're really close, I normally don't bother because you still have sanding or smoothing and then sanding, and you can kind of adjust it a little bit in there, but we're going to take just a little bit more off the edge here. Okay, and that's almost exactly as the other side was, so I'm happy with that. So for this whole process so far, I've been using this gouge chisel. It's great for rounding over, cutting out rough shapes, and it's what I use probably most of the time. And then this is probably my second most used chisel. This is a skew chisel, I think is the term. Feel free to correct me. So I'll go across the whole piece. I don't know if you can see, but there's some very visible lines going across the grain here from the gouge. And so this just kind of takes those down, gets any uneven areas leveled out, and then we'll move on to sanding. And I don't know if it comes up on the camera very well, but you can actually kind of see some of those lines start to disappear as you smooth the edge across with this skew. Okay, that is pretty even and pretty smooth taper. I'm very happy with that. And now we just have to sand. So I start with an 80 grit, and then I go up to 150 and then 240, because that's what I have in my little kit over here. I don't normally go higher than that, even though I have some higher grits back here. I can explain all that in a different video if y'all care, but let's get some sanding done. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. I've been filming for just over half an hour, so that's about how long it takes to make, maybe a little less if I'm not pausing to talk every few steps. But I'm going to do a little bit more sanding, and then I will show you guys kind of the finishing process too. I'll be back. Okay, so I finished getting this sanded, and I also went over to my miter saw and just cut each end off a little bit because the lathe will leave some marks on the end. So I just want to get rid of those, make it really nice. And the last thing I want to do is still back on the lathe is I want to bevel these edges just a little bit and just give them a little bit more of an embellished look. So I have this disc sander jig that I've attached to my lathe, and it's not perfect, but it does the trick. I use it for quite a few different things. So let's go get these edges beveled, and then we'll move on to oil. Okay, I promise I'm almost done talking at you guys, but we are in the other corner of my shop where I kind of have my glue up and finishing table, and this rolling pin is just almost done. I am going to put some tung oil on it. I like to use this for really most of my projects. It's food safe, it's fun to just kind of wipe it on and wipe it back off, easy to use. And you can finish projects on the lathe. I do that a lot, but for this, because I was doing the bevel and everything, I just figured I would do it all at once after it was off the lathe. Just kind of project dependent on how you want to do that.